Welcome back to Engine Shop Joe, and we're back into features and parameters. I'd say we've got two more weeks after this, and we should be done. Okay, let's get going. Okay, we left off at fan control, and this, if it's enabled, that tells the ECM that it does have to control when the fan turns on and turns off. And I'm talking about the engine fan that's right by the radiator, the great big fan driven by the belt in most cases. So fan control logic is 0 volts on or 12 volts on. If it's a 12 volt system, it's 24 volt. And 0 volts on is called fail safe. That means if a wire breaks somewhere, the fan's going to run all day long. It takes 12 volts to keep the fan turned off. I'm not going to go into fan controls and electronic fans and all that here. Another time we'll do that. Air conditioning pressure input switch, if the truck got AC on it, that'll be turned on unless it's multiplexed. So when we get to multiplexing, I'll explain all that. But also under air conditioning pressure input switch, there's a couple other options that can come into play when it's turned on. Fan control switch, if the driver's got a switch in a truck where he can hit it and turn the fan on whenever he wants, that would have to be enabled. Fan minimum runtime. Most manufacturers, PACCAR always used to say they wanted that set at 30 minutes. And they do that so if the driver's in city traffic and the fan comes on because the AC calls for it, it will come on and run for 30 seconds to pull that head pressure down to an acceptable rate, and it stops the fan from going on and off quickly, which over time shortens the life of the fan hub. Fan on with engine braking. Most guys, I'd say 99% of the guys I ever met did not want that turned on. A couple guys that really hauled heavy wanted it on because the fans do take horsepower to run when they're locked in. So if the fan locks in and the engine's at 1800 RPM going down a hill with the engine brakes on, the fan is adding about 20 or 30 horsepower and drag to the engine brakes. Fan on with remote throttle. If you turn that on, you have to be on remote throttle, and then the fan would also run on the engine, on the drive engine. If that's turned off, the ECM would not look at the remote throttle to see if it needed to turn the fan on or off. So the fan wouldn't function with the remote throttle in use. Fan type, there's many different kinds. On a truck, it's going to be on or off. Other choices are viscous, hydraulic, but those are for special applications. Okay, fuel level sensor 2 enabled. If you have, on the newer trucks, the ECM knows what the fuel level is. It needs to know what it is because that's part of the system that it uses for tampering. And that comes in with the SCR system, where if you run the SCR fluid really low and you stop and you fill the fuel tank up and it sees more than, I think it's 35% change, you're at 5 miles an hour. If there's a second tank with a level sensor in it, you have to tell it, hey, there's 2 tanks. You need to look at the other tank too. Gear down protection is turned off. In our case, if that's turned on, whenever the driver's 1 gear down or 2 gears down, you can set the maximum road speed he's allowed to go in those gears. You have to be careful setting that you understand what you're doing, or you can make the truck really undrivable. So governor type, you've got automotive and you've got variable speed. So variable speed makes the governor like a cat, behave like a cat engine, the way the throttle feels on a cat. Automotive makes it feel like your car. That's the easiest way to describe that. Cummins said, and If you have a truck that's between 2010 and 2017, leave that at automotive because they had some trouble with the variable governor being quirky. I don't know if they fixed that or not in newer calibration updates, but the engineers told me just turn variable off. If drivers were complaining about throttle response and erratic throttle behavior, the first thing they ask is it on variable, and if yes, turn it off. This governor type is nice for guys that haul really super heavy. You can turn it on variable and it makes it feel like the engine's got more power. It really doesn't, but it makes it feel that way. Engine speed acceleration management. If you turn that on, you can control how aggressive the engine is as it goes through the gears. Part of that is helping to prolong the life of the equipment, because some guys just like to hit the next gear and bang his foot right to the floor. Got a lot of horsepower and torque these days, so that helped to control the life of the transmission, driveline, that kind of thing. Governor type switch. If that's enabled, the operator has a choice of switching between an automotive and a variable speed governor. But you have to put that switch in. It's not part of the truck. It doesn't come shipped with the truck unless it's special ordered. High soot load shutdown, that's almost always enabled. That's so if the after treatment plugs up, you don't cause bigger problems. The engine will just start the derate process. The stop engine light will come on. It'll shut down. I never saw that turned off if the truck had after treatment. Idle shutdown, that's disabled in this case. That's turned on to control the driver so that he can't idle the truck all night long. Some guys have those pony engines on the side, the tri-packs that'll run AC and heat, but they don't like all the noise it makes. The engine's much quieter idling, so they would just leave that off, let the engine idle, and defeat the purpose of saving wear on the main engine and fuel, because the drive engine would use more fuel typically than those tri-pack engines would, or the pony engine, whatever you want to call it. And so you could turn on idle shutdown, and it would shut the engine, the main drive engine, off within so many minutes. You could also put an override in there. If you turned override on, if the guy waited till, let's say you had it set at 20 minutes, at 19 and a half minutes, the check engine light would start flashing. And if usually it would just tap the brake pedal and push the clutch in. If it's got an automatic, he'd have to tap the brake pedal, hold it down for a couple seconds and let it up. And then the engine would not shut down. It would keep on idling. So there were some options under idle shutdown as well. The 1939 controls, if that's enabled, that means somebody can go in with a hand scanner, not Cummins Insight. And with a hand scanner, they can look at the faults, check the faults, and they can reset the faults. If that's turned off, only Insight will be able to be used on the vehicle. 1939 trip reset is the last part of that scanner thing. With the trip reset, they can reset your mile per hour and idle time and all that in a trip. Load-based speed control is the vehicles, you go in and you set mile per hour depending on the amount of load that the vehicle senses. That's kind of a driver control thing. Maintenance monitor, almost nobody uses anymore. If you turn that on, you have to go in and set either time or miles. Some big fleets use it to remind the driver to go in and get an oil change. When you turn that on, once you reach your time limit, when the driver starts the truck, the engine stop and check lights will stay on for 30 seconds after the engine starts and then go off. When the driver sees that, he knows that the maintenance monitor is telling him it's time to do something. Maximum vehicle speed control is a nice feature. We used to turn that on, and you have to put a switch in the dash for that. And then when the switch is turned on, you can set, say, the road speed to 60. When it's turned off, 75. We used to use that for the guys that went to Canada, because in Canada you were not allowed to be over 60 miles an hour. I'm talking about back in the 2015, 16. I don't know what it is today. But when they got to the border, they'd flip that switch and the truck would not go over 60. When they got back to the States, they'd flip it the other way and they could go 75 again. All right, we're going to stop there. Thanks for joining me on Engine Shop Joe. Subscribe if you haven't.